So today I'll be talking about politics, religion, ethics, my own personal version of anarchism. And I'll try to take as many questions as people put forth, which at the moment is going to be nobody, because I've got literally no one except for myself watching this. So I have no viewership base. Mostly what I'm doing is for my own purposes, trying to develop, my own way of describing how the world and philosophy and ethics work. Because really there's no system that perfectly describes the way that I think about things. So I'm just going to make my own up, and then you can tack my name onto it. Or some word phrase that describes it. I'm in my own house, so I can cough as much as I want to. Yeah, I'm going to ignore that. I'm using a website called I Side With. Here. I don't know how chat replays work, but if there is such a thing as chat replays with Twitch, then you can see the link that I've just posted. It's just isidewith.com/political-quiz. And that's got a long list of questions, just to help you figure out what your philosophy is or politics are. And also where a very small handful of political officials stand on certain things. Right now it's really just for, I think, president, vice president, and no, I don't think they've even got vice president in there. I think it's just president, governor, when there is a governor's race, and Senate. I don't know if they've got like House of Representatives in there or not. They really have to throw out like the most difficult questions to answer, like first in this list. Like the first question they ask is, do you support the Patriot Act? And I was okay, so it passed on in 2001, so I was a young teenager when that happened, and it's been around for close to 2 decades now, so I would hope that I've learned enough about it to be able to take a position on it. But it could be that I'm just assuming that I know about it, and that the reason why I'm saying that is just because that applies to a lot of the questions that are in I Side With's survey. It's good if you're looking for a resource to help you get up to speed on certain issues. Um, but if you're just kind of looking for very quick and dirty uh, questionnaire to help you match up with, um, a given candidate, you're you're probably going to end up either skipping a lot of questions or just making a guess. As far as where you land on it, but otherwise, you're going to be investing a lot of time into figuring out what the dealio is with each one of these questions. And if you really want to dig down deep into your personal philosophies, the I Side With website gives you a tool. It is a tool to help you figure that stuff out. It's a good tool to help you do that. Because you'll start with one question. It seems pretty obvious on the surface. I think one that I got stuck on, for weeks, and have been kind of avoiding really talking about it or putting the energy into researching it is torture, aka enhanced interrogation techniques. Because it's not just a legal or political issue, it's one of ethics and individual rights and group rights and immigration and just how of international law, or how countries ought to deal with each other, or how just people who aren't necessarily a representative or a soldier fighting for a company are treated, or expect treatment from other people. So yeah, that's kind of the broad structure. Let's look through the whole Wikipedia article about the Patriot Act. Disclosing my biases on this, I think what I know about it is that, like, the big deal with the Patriot Act is that it's about wiretapping U.S. citizens. And from what I know, the last time I heard anything about it, was just that, when it was really in part of an intense, popular debate, was that it didn't wiretap U.S. citizens. It wiretapped phone calls between U.S. citizens and somebody from another country, or somebody who just wasn't part of the U.S. So it didn't matter whether you're a soldier from Britain, or that we're an ally with, or like a non-combatant or not a non-combatant, a terrorist combatant that's not affiliated with the government and may or may not be part of a militant group that's been designated as a terrorist group. So in other words, who cares if it's wiretapping some guy who's not really even part of any government military, but is just out there, causing, murdering people and is a terrorist. It's just capturing that part of the conversation. It's not necessarily keeping a record of any information from the U.S. citizen that's involved in the phone conversation. But I look at that and I'm like, that, when I heard that, like, I was like, yeah, I don't see how you could just record one side of the conversation without hearing the other part of it. Uh, maybe there's technically a way to do that, but otherwise you're just going to involve recording the whole conversation between, two or more parties and then redacting it after the fact. But even then you're probably really not, you start to get on the slippery slope where you're like, did you really redact it, before anybody heard it? Or do you actually have a full record of the conversation that's being passed around, and the only time you really redact it is when it comes down to a court case of, you know, discussing how you dealt with the information you learned from the conversation. It's like, I'm, even if that were the case, where you're wiretapping a U.S. citizen, who's talking with somebody who's a known or suspected terrorist, and that's an important designation there, or distinction. Somebody who's a suspected terrorist is not a terrorist necessarily. It just means that you're monitoring that person and trying to investigate whether or not they are in fact a terrorist. But it's like, okay, if you're talking with a person who's a suspected terrorist, first of all, if you're a suspected terrorist, maybe there's a good reason for it. Maybe it ought to be monitored to make sure that you're not doing anything that's going to hurt people. And second of all, if you're talking with a suspected terrorist, that kind of throws suspicion on you too. Sorry, my cousin just happened to be Osama bin Laden's cousin. And even though he was a suspected terrorist, I wanted to talk to him about something completely non-terrorist related. There's like billions of people on the earth. Just talk with somebody who's not a suspected terrorist. So that's ostensibly what it is. I'm sure that when you start peeling off the marketing that you're getting from Congress, this is like across multiple departments and stuff. Once you peel off the marketing, you're probably going to get into worse and worse abuses of that law. So it's like, okay, on the surface, sketchy, but maybe legit. Once you start looking more into it, it's going to get creepier and creepier and start encroaching more and more on people who totally aren't terrorists or have anything to do with terrorism. There's this phrase that goes, if you did nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear. But, as we've seen repeatedly, like just the last few months, that's totally not the case. You can be an innocent bystander, not even involved in any kind of criminal activity, and still get brutalized by police or arrested by unmarked federal officials. And there's no accountability process for that. There's no public transparency. So it's like, okay, the citizens are supposed to be totally transparent and have all of their daily goings about scrutinized by, the feds, but, the feds don't want to have any kind of accountability or scrutiny applied to them. So, on principle, if we look in imaginary land, is this recording? I hope it's recording because I don't want to just. How do you just set it to record? Oh my goodness, this should not be that hard to figure out. Just tell me whether or not it's recording. Oy. Look. No, I don't want that. All right, let me just talk a little bit more about the Patriot Act, and then I'm going to stop this, make sure it's a recorded video that I can use later on, that I can just upload to YouTube or whatever for preservational purposes. And then I can start the stream back up and continue talking. All right, I'm just gonna not do that then because it looks like it's recording. See, I do not have to worry about people getting impatient and leaving because nobody is currently watching this. And anybody watching a YouTube upload of this can just fast forward to when I actually start talking about things again. And that thing there that shows that there's 2 viewers actually doesn't have anything to do with it. There is a non-me person watching this. That's just because I've got the Twitch app open and I'm watching myself. So I could actually inflate my numbers by 1. How do you just... How do you just return to advanced mode? Here. Just give me mod mode or moderator view, like advanced. Aha! It's a little sword thingy. Oh, there is somebody watching. That is not me. Okay, so new user Stripfang. If you have any questions to ask me about anything really, because like literally you have my complete undivided attention, just say so. Because like I'm really not doing anything else. I'm talking about the Patriot Act right now, so but I can just drop what I'm doing and talk about any subject you bring up if you want. Alright, so back to reading the Wikipedia article on the Patriot Act, because I know next to nothing about it. The USA Patriot Act is an act of Congress of the United States. I have not gotten any better on my live reading of stuff, on my orational skills of reading stuff that somebody else has written. The USA Patriot Act, commonly known as the Patriot Act, is an act of the United States Congress that was signed into law by U.S. President George W. Bush on October 26, 2001. So wait, they didn't even give it like 2 months after 9/11 before they signed that into law? USA Patriot is a backronym that stands for Uniting and Strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. You know, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's called the U.S. military. What would it be if you had, like, the stuff that isn't pronounced audibly? U-A-S-A-V. So if you actually pronounced it like it's supposed to be, or as it's written, it would be USA Patriot Clouds. USA Patriot Clouds. The Patriot Act was written following the September 11th attacks in an effort to dramatically tighten U.S. national security, particularly as it is related to foreign terrorism. In general, the Act included 3 main provisions: expanded abilities of law enforcement to survey, including by tapping domestic and international phones. How do you zoom out? I have a lot of control over that. So when I was talking at the start of the stream, or earlier a few minutes ago, I was talking about how I thought it was international only, but this says domestic too, which, you know, still bad. No, which is. I think it's okay if if it's used for what it's supposed to be used for, but I don't think it's being used for what it's supposed to be used for only. Eased interagency communication to allow federal agencies to more effectively use all available resources in counterterrorism efforts. If you've ever read a book called The Looming Tower, or really even the 9/11 report, um, it's just glaringly obvious that they're the conspiracy theorists are wrong about there being this vast conspiracy of people cooperating with each other to hide the truth behind 9/11, which really isn't the truth. It's just some kook fringe nonsense. It was a result of a lack of communication between a large group of people. You had the CIA that had certain information and could have passed it off to the FBI legally, and there would have been nothing illegal about it, or in breach of a procedure, or if it was in breach of a procedure, then the procedure should have been made so that that communication would be encouraged rather than discouraged. But you had the CIA that was hoarding information and keeping it from the FBI, who could have actually done something about the people that were in the country and about just terrorism in general that could have been prevented. That's not like saying the CIA is responsible for 9/11. It's just saying, well, you guys could have stopped being paranoid about the other intelligence community that's official and part of the government, and actually share information that could have cracked down on terrorism. So it wasn't that interagency communication was disallowed. It was just not being practiced prior to the Patriot Act. Continuing, increased penalties for terrorism crimes and an expanded list of activities which would qualify someone to be charged with terrorism. Sounds good. How about we not let people get away with terrorism without actual punitive sentencing? All right, reading the history part. You know what? Here we go. How do you just share to a social media website? Aha. Yeah, I don't want to do that. Yeah, I'm just not going to do this. Alright, so continuing talking about the Patriot Act, unless someone else wants to talk about anything else, like literally anything else. The Patriot Act was enacted in direct response to the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City and the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, as well as the 2001 anthrax attacks. Interesting. I didn't know that was a contributing factor to dramatically strengthen national security. You know, I wonder if it was more the September 11th stuff or the anthrax attacks, because, you know, the anthrax attacks are like the actual Congress people being targeted, whereas, you know, with the Pentagon and World Trade Center stuff, like, they're like, those are just the commoners, you know, the grunts, the disposable people. But anthrax being sent to Congress people, I won't have it. We must enact the Patriot Act. On October 23rd, 2001, U.S. Representative Jim Sensenbrenner, who's this guy? Good grief. Serving his 21st term in office. That's pretty appalling. Wow. Okay, so there used to be a House Select Committee for Energy Independence and Global Warming for 4 years, from 2007 to 2011, before Republicans abolished the committee after regaining control of the House. So I'm going to follow this indignation. Let me see. So how did he vote with regard to the impeachment of Trump? Because he was all on board with the impeachment of Clinton. Yep. He voted against the Trump impeachment. Oh, wow. So it's all well and good when it's his guy doing the lying in front of a federal investigation, but when it's someone else, then no, it's a problem. Phew. I'm just reading through this guy's list of dirty deeds. No, it's bad. You just read through this guy's Wikipedia page. It's like, think of the concept of bad and then go on this guy's Wikipedia page and it lines up really well. Alright, I gotta get off this page. This guy is. Wow. No, I just can't. This guy is just the opposite of anything that you'd want to vote for. I don't know how he could even do that. Alright, so back to the Patriot Act. On October 23rd, 2001, U.S. Representative Jim Sensenbrenner introduced House Bill yada yada, which incorporated provisions from a previously sponsored House bill and a Senate bill introduced earlier in the month. The next day, on October 24th, the act passed the House by a vote of yada yada, nobody cares, with Democrats comprising the overwhelming majority of no votes. The three Republicans voting no were Robert Ney, Butch Otter, and Ron Paul. On October 25th, the act passed the Senate with a vote of 98-1, with Russ Feingold being the sole no vote. That's still one person who's missing. Like, who abstained? Landrieu. Who's Landrieu? Mary Landrieu. jerk. She voted for the confirmation of Roberts. Oh, I thought closure was spelled like Closure. Yeah, she's a mixed bag. This guy has the most southern name for somebody who's in the northwestern part of the U.S. Clement Leroy Butch Otter. He's still alive. See what dirty deeds he was part of. That doesn't seem like a good idea. In 2014, Otter established the Wolf Control Fund and State Board, which continues his policy of exterminating wolves in Idaho. Aren't wolves, like, endangered? I mean, they're not like an invasive species or anything. Hang on, how is CBD oil? Okay, so Senate Bill yada yada would have legalized CBD oil for persons with severe epilepsy, but he vetoed it. Okay, well, I mean, CBD oil is like a naturopathy thing and doesn't actually work. It ignores ongoing scientific testing on alternative treatments. It asks us to trust but not verify. It asks us to legalize the limited use of cannabinoid oil contrary to federal law. No, it doesn't. That's not what CBD oil is. And it asks us to look past the potential for misuse and abuse with criminal intent. Right? No, that's the wrong tack to take. You oppose CBD oil because it's snake oil. It doesn't do anything. You don't oppose it because people might try to get high on CBD oil, which you can't do anyway. Unless it's actual weed oil. All right, just I was going into this like trying to establish like my stance on ethics and stuff, and instead I'm like going into this like looking at scandals and such. Wow. So it's like, okay, you did the right thing by voting no on the Patriot Act, maybe. But then you've got this long list of like other, like these three Republicans, well, two, Ron Paul really isn't that bad, who had all kinds of other dirty deeds going on. It's like, you could actually just be consistent in not being a terrible person. Ooh. List of federal political scandals in the United States. I that's got to be like a, how they have pictures like of what Wikipedia would look like if you printed it all out. Like that would just sit next to that, and it would be like twice as big or something. Opponents of the law have criticized its provision for indefinite detention of immigrants, permission to law enforcement to search a home or business without the occupant's consent or knowledge under certain circumstances, the expanded use of national security letters. A national security letter is... Come on. Oh my goodness. A national security letter is an administrative subpoena issued by the U.S. government to gather information for national security purposes. NSLs do not require prior approval from a judge. The Stored Communications Act, Fair Credit Reporting Act, and Right to Financial Privacy Act authorize the U.S. government to seek such information that is relevant to authorized national security investigations. So let me get this straight. The financial privacy, the right to Financial Privacy Act makes it so that you don't have a right to privacy under these circumstances. Who's authorizing this? Because it says a judge doesn't authorize it. Which allows the FBI to search telephone, email, and financial records without a court order, and the access of law enforcement agencies to business records, including library and financial records. Since its passage, several court challenges have been brought against the act, and federal courts have ruled that a number of provisions are unconstitutional. Many of the act's provisions were set to expire at sunset on December 31st, 2005, approximately 4 years after its enactment. In the months preceding the sunset date, supporters of the act pushed to make those provisions permanent. while critics sought to revise various sections to enhance civil liberties protections. In July 2005, the U.S. Senate passed a reauthorization bill with substantial changes to several of the Act sections, while the House reauthorization bill kept most of the Act's original language. The two bills were then reconciled in a conference committee criticized by senators from both the Republican and Democratic parties for ignoring civil liberty concerns. So basically what happened was the Senate goes, all right, here's some substantial changes that'll protect civil liberties, and the House goes, no, we're just going to keep the original version. It's like, okay, we've had 4 years of people bringing up these issues saying this needs to change, and then the House of Representatives, which really I should say is just Republicans, because at the time it was Republicans. What was it in 2000? The U.S. House of Representatives in 2005. Yeah. Wait. Well, it doesn't make sense. Okay, so it was in July that it passed. In 2006. What in the world? The bill, which removed most of the changes from the Senate version, passed Congress on March 2nd, 2006, and was signed by President Bush on March 9th and 10th of that year. So it's like the Senate went through and improved it, and then the House goes, never happened. So 2006 is when it was relevant. It's dominated by Republicans. So it's pretty much a no. It was the Senate was dominated by Republicans. So was the House. All right. On May 11, 2012, President Barack Obama signed the Patriot Sunsets Extension Act of 2011, a 4-year extension of 3 key provisions in the act. Roving wiretaps, right, full stop there. What is a roving wiretap? Is a wiretap that follows a surveillance target. For instance, if a target attempts to defeat a regular wiretap by throwing away a phone and acquiring a new one, another surveillance order would usually be needed to be applied for the tap. No, to tap the new one. A roving wiretap, once authorized, follows the target rather than a specific phone device and would give the surveying body permission to tap a second and subsequent phones without applying for new surveillance orders. So who cares? So when would the second, like the 2006 reauthorization, like expire? Search of business records and conducting surveillance of lone wolves, individuals suspected of terrorist-related activities not linked to terrorist groups. After reauthorization bills failed to pass Congress, parts of the Patriot Act expired June 1st, 2015. Okay, so wait, here. All right. So the Patriot Sunsets Extension Act of 2011, like it's not clear exactly what that bill consisted of, because it's only talking about 3 provisions, and then later on it says that parts of the Patriot Act expired. So it's like, what is expiring here? The USA Freedom Act, which became law on June 2nd, 2015, reenacted these expired sections through 2019. That's bad. Like, okay, if what I'm reading is correct, then they're saying that, like, there were no amendments or anything, like, there were no revisions, like, it's just the same old Patriot Act that you've had since 2001, and you're reenacting it, like, without any changes. Only difference is that they're pointing out here in this particular article is, however, Section 215 of the law was amended to disallow the NSA to continue its mass phone data collection program. So, phone data, I guess, would be everything from who you called to actual copies of the phone calls. Instead, phone companies will retain the data, and the NSA can obtain information about targeted individuals with a federal search warrant. So earlier in the article, they said that you didn't need a warrant. You could just do it without a warrant. And here they're saying that the NSA at least needs a warrant to get the stuff from the phone companies. So, I mean, you're still allowed to collect mass data. It's just you have the phone companies doing it for you. All that's doing is turning the phone companies into a federal contractor. Like, that's just an extra step. I mean, I can see how maybe you'd be saving money, you know, by having the phone companies, which maybe are collecting the data anyway, forwarding it to the FBI and the NSA, yada yada. In November 2019, the renewal of the Patriot Act was included in the stopgap legislation. The expired provisions required renewal by March 15th, 2020. The Senate passed a 77-day extension in March 2020, which again, the Senate's still Republican controlled. But the House of Representatives did not pass the legislation before departing for recess on March 27, 2020. By the way, they didn't. They also left so much legislation that needed to go through, but Moskowitz just kept killing the bills because soiled Putin. Um, on May 19th, 2020, the Senate voted to give law enforcement agencies, the FBI and CIA, the power to look into U.S. citizens' browser history without a warrant. So, you know how I was talking at the top of this stream about, like, how, you know, I could see it would be reasonable to tap somebody's phone if they were talking to a U.S. citizen, as long as you were just tapping the person who was in another country and weren't recording the U.S. citizen. And in some circumstances, if a U.S. citizen was talking to a suspected terrorist, then fine, it'd be okay to tap them. But now you're getting into really sketchy territory about directly targeting U.S. citizens under suspicion that they're a terrorist, and you're doing it without a warrant. That's not good. That's leaving plenty of room for abuse and no accountability and no transparency. That's not good. It's like there's certain circumstances where certain aspects of the Patriot Act would be fine, but as it's currently implemented, it's not okay. And of all the things that the Senate was busy doing, like, that's the one that you needed? Like, of all the things the Senate could have done, that's the one that you needed the most? Like, someone's browser search history? Like, people can get a VPN. The only people that's gonna address is, like, people who are too stupid to get a VPN. Terrorists are gonna get a VPN. You know, you talk about, like, well, the only way that you can defeat a bad guy with a gun is with another gun. And if you take away the people's guns, then only the bad guys are gonna have guns. Well, in this case, the only people that you're targeting are people who are not going to be terrorists, because any terrorists are going to be using VPN and deliberately avoiding getting caught by the FBI and CIA. I mean, I can see how if you pass something that's, you know, just to target browser search history to, you know, then extend into searching someone's computer for literally anything that you want to search for, or using ISPs or any kind of data collection to get any kind of digital data out of somebody. You know, I expect that's the way that things go. You just have a finite scope and then you can do anything with it. It's no longer finite. It's not about browser history. You can just take any of somebody's information without their asking, without a warrant, no accountability, nothing. I haven't even scrolled through, like, dude, that's how much I've read. Like, that's how much I've scrolled through. This article is long, and I'm already getting butthurt about it. Oh my goodness, and then there's, like, stuff that, like, links to the different titles. I'm never gonna get through this. What does that mean? What does this mean? This is a poorly formatted map. Okay, the section about section expirations, like where they've got a line drawn through each one. What does that mean? Does that mean it expired and then it got reauthorized? There's only one that hasn't been reauthorized? So basically the whole damn thing is authorized right now except for this one section. I'm feeling sleepy. Oh my goodness, this is a huge topic. I'm never gonna get through this. This is just one question. There's like 200 questions in the I side with quiz. I don't know what would happen if I just took a nap on stream. Can you even see me from that angle? Echo. Set a reminder for 5 minutes.
What's the reminder for?
Continue streaming.
Okay, I'll remind you in 5 minutes.
I mean, I can do whatever I want. It's my channel. I'm pretty sure there's no Twitch violation that I could incur by just not doing anything. Like, literally, I am not doing anything. And I might get into trouble for it, but I don't think I could. They might get people into trouble just for not doing anything. It's like you can get into trouble for doing anything on Twitch, or you can get into trouble for not doing anything.
Here's a reminder. Continue streaming. Here's a reminder. Continue streaming.
Okay. Feeling kind of hungry. Maybe I ought to get some more pizza rolls. Enhancing domestic. This is from Title 1. Enhancing domestic security against terrorism. Title 1 of the Patriot Act measures. Title 1 of the Patriot Act authorizes measures to enhance the ability of domestic security services, services to prevent terrorism. The title established a fund for counter-terrorist activities and increased funding for the Terrorist Screening Center, which is administered by the FBI. The military was authorized to provide assistance in some situations that involve weapons of mass destruction when requested by the Attorney General. By the way, Attorney General is not an elected position. The National Electronic Crime Task Force. That's probably an agency that's getting millions of dollars in funding and has officers with weapons and stuff. Along with the president's authority and abilities in cases of terrorism, the title also condemned the discrimination against Arab and Muslim Americans that happened soon after the September 11th terrorist attacks. Alright, so I'm in favor of religious discrimination. I am not in favor of racial or ethnic or cultural discrimination. Unless your culture is bad, in which case, change your culture. The US South has a culture. It's a bad culture. Change it. You're not married to it. You don't have to stay in one culture. You know, you can be like in the southernmost part of the world, like close to Antarctica or something, and fly up north to Greenland or something and adopt their culture. Or you can go from there down to the south, or you can fly from literally one spot on one side of the globe to 180 degrees on the other side of the globe and adopt that culture. You don't have to be tied to it. You can change your culture. You can't change your lineage or your who your parents are. You don't have to stay in a religion unless you've got people that are trying to actively destroy your life if you try to leave the religion, like it is with Scientology, Christianity. I think Judaism isn't so bad about it. Or Islam. You know, people change religions all the time. So if your religion sucks, leave it. If somebody wants to discriminate against you based on your religion, then that's not necessarily something that is a bad thing. Especially if you're part of a religion that targets LGBTQ plus people. I don't agree with the separation of church and state. I agree with the separation of church from everything else. Go do your rituals in your basement. Don't expect like tax exemptions and stuff for people that are in your ministry. Okay. So that's probably going against the Twitch terms and conditions. Um, if it were up to me, I'd be using the Patriot Act to wiretap like the church that's down the road and go like, why is your money all just happening to go to this elected congressman that goes to your church? Like, you guys need to be investigated. Alright, this is getting sloppy. I need to just talk about the Patriot Act. The thing is, the government should not be mandating. See, I don't know what this entails. It just says it condemns discrimination against Muslim Americans that happened soon after the September 11th terrorist attacks. People who are Sikh also got picked on because they happen to have turbans and people can't tell the stinking difference between two types of hat wear, apparently. So if that expanded beyond condemnation of discrimination against Muslims to actually trying to enforce that would be a violation of the separation of church and state. Because one religion can discriminate against another religion because they're diametrically opposed. You could have somebody who's worshiping God A, and in their religion it says that God B is evil, and then in religion B's religion they worship God B and they say that God A is evil. And both of them are in death cults and want to destroy the other one. But they can't kill other people, but they can discriminate against each other. Can't kill each other because the government says you're not allowed to kill other people because of their religion. But you can discriminate against the other people because it's against your religion. So just keep the government from trying to ban discrimination based on religion. Religion is ideology, race, ethnicity is not. Stuff that you can't change about yourself needs to be protected, or even certain things that you don't want to change about yourself that other people say you have to change about yourself because it doesn't go against or it doesn't jive with their religion, need to just shut up. It's just, I don't know. The way that religion is currently being handled by the government is not good. You've got Christian extremists that are being hired to every office. It's just, we've got theocracy running rampant. It's just trampling over all kinds of civil liberties, and it's a result of saying, well, we can't discriminate against religion, therefore religion must be allowed to discriminate against other people. It's like this whole thing, what we're seeing and what's going to happen soon, what we already have seen in terms of civil liberties being trampled on by religious people is a result of us not being able to discriminate against religions. Discrimination against religion ought to be allowed. Discrimination against people ought not to be allowed. There's a difference between your belief and who you are. You are not necessarily just your beliefs, you're also your actions and a whole bunch of other stuff. That light, like the positioning that they've got it just keeps washing it out. Look at this. Look at that glare. That's a little better. I need to get like a tripod for my phone though. Or like an actual dedicated phone. Yada 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 yada. Stop moving. It's kind of hiding the camera lens too. The impetus for many of the provisions came from earlier bills. That's slipping again, isn't it? Okay, looks like it's stable. Came from earlier bills. For instance, the condemnation of discrimination was originally proposed by Senator Tom Harkin. Let's look up this guy. No, you are not a good person. Harkin has been influential in increasing research funding for alternative medicine. Oh my goodness, please tell me that's not still something that still exists. It's in present tense. Oh my goodness, that office should not exist. Yep, go figure. Oh my goodness. So we have a government office of quackery. Like we have an office that's dedicated to going, hey, this nonsense that we know doesn't work. Let's throw money at it to see how much it doesn't work. Their budget was $124 million in 2015. They had $22 million dedicated to a study that was going, does prayer treat diseases? Result, no results reported. $400,000 towards use of coffee enemas to cure pancreatic cancer. No evidence for curative effects. $2 million. Can magnets cure arthritis, carpal tunnel syndrome, or migraine headaches? Result. Improvements in pain intensity did not differ significantly from changes in the sham group or the usual care group. Other results. No result reported. No evidence for such. No results reported. Distant healing or prayer from a distance does not appear to improve selected clinical outcomes in HIV patients who are on combination antiretroviral therapy. No results reported. No evidence for such. No evidence for curative effects and no results reported. Oh my goodness. What do you want to bet that they're getting more money than the CDC? So this piece of crap, Tom Harkin, okay, so maybe he did some good things, but he also did really terrible things. In an amendment to the Combating Terrorism Act of 2001, though in a different form. So let me get this straight. Why would they put the condemnation in the same bill, no, in the same title as stuff that's establishing a National Electronic Crime Task Force? It's like, you know, guys, maybe you ought to make those two different bills so we can just talk about these things separately. It originally included the prayer of Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, the Archbishop of Washington, in a mass on September 12, 2001 for our nation and the victims in the immediate aftermath of the terrorist hijackings and attacks in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania. It reminds all Americans that we must seek the guilty and not strike out against the innocent. We become like them. That's not how it works. Wait. Who without moral guidance or proper direction. Wait a second. If you're passing the Patriot Act, then maybe, yeah, that's exactly what you're saying is happening. I need to clean this. I mean, you're part of the thing that you're condemning, which is targeting innocents in an effort to get at the bad guys. And also, you're putting a prayer into an act of Congress. What part of the No Establishment Clause did you not understand? You're putting the establishment of a religion as an endorsement into a bill. So, yeah, it's a good thing that they took that part out of the bill. Further condemnation of racial vilification and violence is also spelled out in Title X, where there was condemnation of such activities against Sikh Americans who were mistaken for Muslims after the September 11th terrorist attack. So it started in 1469. No. Started during. Sikhism started in like the 1500s. So you've got a new religion. Wait, is it a religion or is it an ethnic group? Wait, what's the difference between an ethnic group and a culture? Because if it's a religion, it says, are people associated with a monotheistic religion? So why are they considered an ethnic group? Dude, your ethnicity does not determine your religion. If we're talking about race, then it definitely doesn't, but is ethnicity considered? You know, if your religion is starting out in the 1500s, you're kind of late to the party. Like, by the time you hit, like, I don't know, 7000 BC, you're kind of already late to the party. Like, all the major religions have been established by then, and everything after that is just tweaks on the old stuff. Castes. Religion does not advocate discrimination against any caste or creed. Seeks compose a number of sub-ethnic groups. Social stratification still exists. Well, look, if you're discriminating against people based on social stratification, then yeah, your religion kind of stinks. What is the Green Revolution? Phew. Huh. How do you get to be like the fifth largest religion in the world and yet one of the youngest? Like it's, I mean, Christianity pretty much just like wiped out everybody that disagreed with them. So that's not unprecedented. Yeah, this is also bad. Prohibitions in Sikhism. Ow. In Sikhism, having extramarital sexual relations. Yeah, people shouldn't need your little ritual in order to have sex. Just heck off with that. Intoxication's not allowed. Heck off with that. Gambling's forbidden. Heck off with that. Non-family oriented living is not allowed. In other words, you're not allowed to live as a recluse, beggar, yogi, monastic, or celibate. So yeah, heck off with that. If somebody wants to live like that, let them. All right, so some really bad stuff, but as far as religions are concerned, they're less violent and controlling. Still ought to be not given the time of day. Alright, so let's read some more on Patriot Act Title 1. How long have I been streaming for? Almost 2 hours. Says it only got one user. Oh, there are people watching this. I don't know why it says I've only got one viewer then. Maybe those are people who've just kind of done a flyby. Blah, 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 blah. So, Section 101 established a separate and unlimited fund entitled the Counterterrorism Fund within the Department of Treasury. The fund is used to reimburse the DOJ for costs required to rebuild an office or facility damaged by terrorism, support counterterrorism efforts, including the paying up rewards, and to pay for terrorism threat assessments. It contained an additional provision to reimburse any U.S. department or agency of all costs related to the detention of individuals in foreign countries who are accused of acts of terrorism. The alleged terrorist can be held without the right to an attorney or the right to remain silent. So they can compel somebody to talk, which basically means the Patriot Act is something that authorizes the DOJ specifically to compel speech. Which means torture. So it's like Title I, torture is okay. But also, don't be mean to Muslims. Those things probably aren't the same thing. Condemnation of discrimination, blah 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 blah. Section 102 is a general statement which confirmed that Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, and Americans from South Asia, again, your region is not your religion. Region and religion are two different things. Condemning somebody who... Was it the Mayans who tore people's hearts out? Yeah, so condemning a Mayan is different than condemning a person who happens to be from the Mayan area. There is nothing inherently part of a religion that makes it something that is vital to the U.S. Like the things that you do, that you actually do, like those are important. Your religion doesn't do jack squat for anybody. And are as equally entitled to full civil rights as any other American. So what do you do with a practicing Mayan? Do they have the full civil rights as any other American, including the civil right to practice their religion, which happens to involve human sacrifice? No. Your religion should not give you a cop-out for violating the civil liberties of others. The section further condemned acts of violence against these people that have occurred since the September 11, 2001 attacks and stated that the responsibility for this 11 September attack lay solely with the individuals who perpetrated them. Why did we go to war then? If it was solely with the individuals who perpetrated them, why did we go to war trying to hunt down Osama bin Laden when he didn't necessarily perpetrate those acts? It was indirect, and he was responsible for those, but he didn't directly perpetrate those acts. This is not a well-written bill. It also found that Muslim Americans have become so fearful of harassment that many Muslim women are changing the way they dress to avoid becoming targets. As opposed to in Muslim countries where if you change the way you dress, you will become a target of those countries, of the men in those countries. And women. Get snitched on by women too. And that many Arab Americans and Muslim Americans have acted heroically during the attacks on the United States. The act specifically mentioned Mohammed Salman Hamdani, a 23-year-old New Yorker of Pakistani descent, which the act states was believed to have gone to the World Trade Center to offer rescue assistance and was believed to have been killed. The act specifically mentioned Pakistanis. So they mention the guy in a bill, but they can't even spell his name right. The section also asserted that the civil rights and civil liberties of all Americans, including Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, and Americans of South Asia, must be practiced. I already read this part. Any acts of violence or discrimination against any Americans must be condemned. No. If you want to discriminate against Nazis from America, you should do that. The concept of individual responsibility for wrongdoing is sacrosanct in American society and applies equally to all religious, racial, and ethnic groups. Alright, so companies, I think it was because of SCOTUS, are considered people. Despite the fact that they're not individuals, like they're a group of individuals operating under a legal structure. And yet we see time and time again where companies are like allowed to get away with stuff because they're companies and not individuals. It's like, all right, make up your mind. Are they an individual who has responsibility for wrongful acts, or are they a group of people, in which case, if there's an act done by multiple people within that group, then it needs to be met with either discipline or, some kind of judicial measure. And that's not even counting the fact that individual responsibility for wrongdoing is not being applied to people from religious groups. In fact, people are getting like special treatment because they're from religious groups. And I'm talking about how like repeatedly you'll have preachers and priests and stuff who are responsible for all kinds of sex offenses or violent crimes, and they'll get a reduced sentence or no sentence, and they'll just get off scot-free because they're part of a religion. The United States is called upon to recognize the patriotism of fellow citizens of all ethnic, racial, and religious backgrounds. Religious backgrounds, yes. Currently being in the religion, you are not necessarily a patriot. There's a difference between patriotism and nationalism. You can be a part of a religion that makes you neither a patriot nor a nationalist for the current country that you're in. If you are a person who is loyal to the Vatican above all else, you're not a patriot for the U.S. You are someone who really ought to have one citizenship, and that is to the Vatican. If you want to have a green card or something, have at it, but you're not loyal to the U.S. You're loyal to the Pope. There are circumstances where things are at odds, and you cannot have one without abolishing the other, or the authority of the other. FBI Technical Support Center funding, who cares? Request for military assistance. To allow the Attorney General to request assistance from the DoD when weapons of mass destruction are used unlawfully in the U.S. Wait, is there a situation in which case a WMD would be lawfully allowed in the U.S.? Or are unlawfully used outside the country by U.S. citizens? Chemical weapons are specifically excluded from the definition of WMDs in this section. Why? They're WMDs. Chemical weapons can be WMDs. There's tons of chemical weapons that can cause mass destruction. Like chlorine. Like regular chlorine that you put in a pool. If you use it inappropriately, it can be used as a weapon to destroy mass amounts of people. It can be a weapon of mass destruction. Expansion of the NECTF. Charged the director of the Secret Service with developing a national network of electronic crime task forces based on New York's Electronic Crimes Task Force model. The network, also known as the National Electronic Crime Task Force, NECTIF, is responsible for preventing, detecting, and investigating electronic crime, including potential terrorist attacks against critical infrastructure and financial payment systems. So, no problemo there. Presidential authority. Section 106 clarified the President's authority to investigate, regulate, and prohibit any financial transactions that fall within the jurisdiction of the U.S. That's not interstate commerce. That's saying any commerce within the United States. So, like, some guy handing a hot dog to his neighbor over the fence, the president's got the jurisdiction to investigate that. The section also authorized the president to confiscate assets belonging to any foreign person, foreign organization, or foreign country who the president found had participated in an act attack on the United States. Finally, this section ordered that if action under this section is based on classified information, the information may be presented to the reviewing judicial authority ex parte and in camera, that is, outside the presence and possibly without the knowledge of the accused or his attorney. So basically, we can do whatever we want, investigate you however we want. You know, if you've been no, that's any action under this section. So that's if information is classified, they can do whatever they want to do with that information, and there's no responsibility that you have to take for relaying that information to the person's attorney. So it's like you do some terroristic act, and they classify it, like you have no right to pretty much anything that happens to you while they're busy investigating you. So to sum up, like Title I, bad stuff about it. Like, is there anything I would oppose in here? Here, it's focusing on the wrong thing. So yes, Twitch. I am totally in favor of discriminating against someone based on the religion they hold. You know, if you're a Mayan and you're practicing Mayan, I'm going to discriminate against you. If you are from a Mayan region, or your parents were Mayans or something, I don't care. I will still be friends with you. So what is the chemical weapons thing about? It's excluding them from so this is like pretty niche. It's excluding chemical weapons from So what it is it's excluding chemical weapons from the list of WMDs that the DOJ's AG can ask the DOD for help with. So it gave the president way too much power. Wait, so it clarified the president's authority to investigate, regulate, or prohibit any financial transactions that fall within the U.S. Look, just let me see it. Because I don't want to be alarmist. Yeah, this isn't exactly clear. Man, U.S. Patriot Act stinking Wikipedia needs to have their links better. Alright, well, what does it actually say? Yeah, and I've officially lost interest in that part of it. Um, so yeah, there really isn't that much that's bad about Title I. It's pretty much just, let's give funding to the people investigating terrorism, and if you do terrorist stuff, you can forget having an attorney be aware of the investigation that the U.S. is doing into you to see if you're doing terrorist stuff, because that would alert you that they're investigating you for terrorism, and you could see how that would be a problem, you know? Like, we don't have to let you know what we're doing to foil your plot to blow up the U.S., okay? By giving your lawyer the information of how we're doing that and how we're monitoring you. Like, you're a terrorist. You don't get all this privileged information. And really, even the discrimination thing that's in there, like, it's non-binding. Like, it doesn't actually say you're not allowed to discriminate against people. It's just a condemnation. It's kind of like, hey, quit doing that. That's bad. But, we're not going to, like, sue you or put you in jail or anything, or fine you, or kick you off Twitch. Just quit doing it. So yeah, I am all for Title I of the Patriot Act. We'll have to get the Title II somewhere else, some other time. This stream's done. Hopefully I can save it and upload it to YouTube. Otherwise I'd just be talking myself the whole time. Thanks to the 0 people who are actually watching this. Oh, there it is.